All right, good morning, everybody. Sunday morning devotional time, and I've got a question for you this morning. What was something that you've had to do that you were not looking forward to, did not want to do, but yet you knew it had to be done? Maybe you were cleaning out the chicken coop, or maybe you were cleaning out and reorganizing the basement, or maybe you had to put a bearing on a manure spreader. Whatever it was, there was no way to not do it. You just had to do it. Well, that is a really light-duty example of what Jesus is going to be going through today in Matthew 26. We're going to go 47 through 56. And like I said, that's actually not really a very great example compared to what he had to go through. But this is where Jesus is getting arrested. And, he could have thrown a fit about it. He could have put up a fight about it. He did not, because he knew that it had to be done. Matthew 26, 47 through 56, and it goes like this. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords, clubs, and sent from chief priests and elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came for." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?" At that time, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sit in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. All right, so Jesus is in the garden. They come to get him, and he understands that this just had to happen. He makes a really good point here that he can call on God and God, I need some help. And God would send legions of angels after him to lift him up and protect him, or to squash this group of people that came to capture him, or whatever it took to protect him, like any one of us would do if our children were in danger. But God didn't do that. What would have happened if Jesus would have thrown a Walker Texas Ranger roundhouse kick and just smoked one of these guys in the face? Peter already had his sword ready to go, and I got to think deep down, Peter's thinking, "Let's do this, Jesus. Let's do this thing." He's ready. But they didn't do any of that. Why not? If you ever think that you're not worthy, if you ever think that God just cannot love you that much, or whatever doubt that you may have, I want you to think about these verses we read today. God could have put a stop to it in any way. He could have sent angels down and just, taken care of this whole group that came to get him. Jesus and Peter and the other disciples could have fought these guys off. But what would the benefit of that have been to us? All this happened not to benefit Jesus. It all happened to benefit us. Ultimately, if Jesus is not arrested this night, then what happens to, this path to the cross? Maybe it doesn't happen at all, right? Ultimately, Jesus has to go die to save us so that we may have a chance to be saved. It's not about saving himself. Jesus already gets to spend eternity in heaven, but he had to do this so that we would have that opportunity as well. And so these scriptures needed to be fulfilled. If Jesus is not arrested, then that may change everything. And so that's why that kind of had to take place. And so deep down, Jesus, he already knew all that. He already understood all that. And that's why he didn't put up a fight. He didn't put up resistance. He just stood and let it happen because it needed to. So I want you to meditate on that this coming week and just think about how much love that took from God towards us, to let this all happen, how much love Jesus had and how much understanding he had of what this meant for our eternity in order to let this all play out. He didn't want to do it, but for our benefit and for our sake, he did. And so if you're ever questioning how much you are loved by our Father, by Jesus, well, the answer's, here in these scriptures we've been going through the last couple weeks. So anyway, I just want you to think about that. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you later. Bye.